17th.
So I call to order this meeting of the Auburn Water District for Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 19th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second? Oh, you got a second.
Anybody have any errors or omissions or anything they'd like to mention about the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, it is unanimous. All right.
Sir, I'd like to suspend the rules. I'd like to buy a little bit of time for Steve and Jason. I'd like to move item number 2 to item just below ratify payment of bills.
A motion has been made to take the executive session, item number 3 out of order and take it next for the financial report. Second, no, that's your motion. Your motion is second?
Yeah.
Yes, second, okay. Second, okay, all in favor? Done.
I apologize.
There I am.
You want to strike it?
No, Pauline is right behind him, so if we got 10 minutes.
Will your ears burn it?
All right, so
No, and I was gonna call, but I left my phone at home.
So we'll go down to number 3 in the financial report with Ken.
Are we doing the executive session now, or?
Well, we're just going to
In like
because we
5
don't know if
minutes.
you're going to be in time.
Oh,
We
okay.
just moved it.
Good. Okay, beautiful.
This shouldn't
Go
take.
for it.
Nope, water sales are down about 3.5% from this time last year, leaving about a $25,000 variance in metered revenues. Overall, there's a $14,000 variance in expenses. Capital work is in full swing, and we spent about $180,000 on capital so far, well, through the end of April. We ended with $3.3 million cash on hand. You did get a copy of the draft audit. Is that? Yes, the draft audit, and there were some comments on there that and we are going to vote to approve that as well.
I've got that in my memo, and I have that later on in the agenda.
Oh, it is in,
Yeah, under
Okay.
new business. yeah.
okay. All right, so that's all I have for the financial report. Any questions?
Okay,
The motion that
do we have to approve that?
Yep.
I think we did.
No, I don't think so.
I think so, yeah.
Do you want this?
No, I.
Don't we usually approve the...
Okay, everyone, motion to approve the,
I move the
Report?
report, the financial report
okay.
update.
All in favor? Okay. So we'll do an executive session. I told Jason he can come in.
Oh, okay, good.
You can do an executive session now.
You guys want a motion and vote on that? We'll get that going.
All right, and I need a motion to move into executive session with, in accordance with MSRA 405(6)E to discuss a legal matter.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? We are in executive session.
Go Celts. Have a good time, man.
Yeah, thank
Get us out of executive session.
you. Great,
Okay, have a great, and let's go.
let's go. Yeah, you better.
Are you staying down there?
No, coming home. Got a blind, deaf, half-dead dog.
No.
She's not half dead, actually. She's doing fine.
Yeah.
Just blind and deaf. The nose works fine.
Still fine.
Steve, safe travels to Boston,
Thank you.
round trip.
Appreciate it. Okay. Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. We'll see y'all.
All
Good.
right, have a good
Thanks.
trip.
Take it easy,
Have a nice
guys.
year.
Hey, see ya.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to sit at the table? or-
Keep it under 78. The bus is
82.
people over 80.
82.
That's right.
I'm leaving that open.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to pro temp today, Steve has to leave. So we'll go on to the next thing. We already had the financial report, we took it out of order. So the next item on the agenda is to ratify the payment of bills.
I'd like to move that we ratify the payment of bills.
Seconds.
All in favor, any comments, first of all, the bills, right? All set, you got all your comments?
Just two.
Okay, and everybody all set? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, next on the item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody here from the public wish to make a comment to the water district?
I guess I'll just ask a question if I may. Last meeting, Mike Broadbent presented a brief summary of a study of the general sand and gravel area on the northeast side of the lake that was under the direction of Holly Ewing at Bates. And I wasn't certain as to whether that's an ongoing activity or whether there was any further comment on that.
So that was a senior thesis that was done by a student that was going to Bates. He
Mr.
also-
Ma, was that Mr. Ma?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Evan.
And he was also, look, John's got it right there. He also did an internship, I believe, with the city of Auburn where he worked on that. There is some very interesting information in that, and again, I brought it to the board's attention, and it is something that we're going to be looking at as potential impacts of the lake and as some of our watershed protection efforts.
Is there more to it than that one page?
No.
Okay.
No.
That was pretty succinct summary.
Right, it is, but there's some powerful information in there.
Yeah.
So
Can you roll that over to the trustees when you get a chance?
I can send it. It was part of the agenda packet last month.
Oh, okay, we have.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
It's in the electronic portion too, right?
I believe I sent it out to everyone. If not, I'll email it tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it in paper copy here.
Okay,
at the
it was
meeting.
in the package. Yep.
We should have lunch with it.
Yeah. Any more public comment? Being none, I'll close public comment and go on to item number 6, which is activity report and project update.
All right.
Mike.
Your activity reports. It's been we're in our busy season of the year. Lots of work going on out there. Our projects are going well. We didn't have anything specific in the activity report that jumped out to me outside of project work, so I'm just going to jump to that. We did have a lot of service repairs, but those kind of go in ebbs and flows sometimes. Project update, we're really doing well. I've been concerned. You know, we're down quite a few staff members, but we're slowly picking them back up with the addition of Matt today. We've got a new finance director coming in on Monday. We are still down a couple of sewer operators, so I've been concerned that our projects and that our work would suffer, but I've been very, very pleased to see that we're not only keeping up, but we're ahead of my schedule that I had set for our own crews. We're going to be wrapping up our work on Hotel Road. That's going to put us over a mile of Main already on the season, and here we are, we're not even done with May. We're already starting a couple other projects. We're going to be on 2nd Street and back over in the Vernon and Grove areas starting next week. So we're hitting it out of the park as far as work is concerned, and operationally we're in good shape. So I am looking at a couple of alternative main replacement projects. If we continue on this trend of being able to be ahead of schedule, and we have an opportunity to do some more replacement above and beyond what we budgeted, I hope to have that at the June trustee meeting for approval. Right now I'm looking at potentially doing Maple Point. It's about 1,000 feet of main there between Manley Road and Poland Road that is it's on our capital improvement plan, and we're working in that area now, so it would be a perfect candidate to add to our project list if time and money permits. So that's your project update. If anyone had any questions on the activity reports?
Anything update on Stable Ridge? Or getting them in compliance with that pump house?
We're still waiting for them to deliver the software that we need to back up their PLC. So what does that all mean? It basically is if the PLC, which is the controller of that station, if it crashed and we had to replace it, we would need a backup of the software to install that so we'd know how to run the station. We don't have that. The only company that has it is it's proprietary information, and it's down in Pennsylvania somewhere. So it would be down for days until we got that backup. So we have required that they provide us with that so that we have it. So if we had to replace the PLC, we could take one out of inventory or from somewhere else and put it in there and upload the program and get it running again. So that's in process. They paid for it, so it's just a matter of when it gets delivered. And outside of that, everything is up to speed. There's a couple little cosmetic things, walkway, and a few other things that they're touching up, but everything else is there.
Cool. Good. All right, any more questions for Mike? Okay, on to item number 7, old business. And the first item is sustainable water supply alternatives.
We did not have a meeting, as though most of you, I think almost this entire board here, except for Bob, is on that committee.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for proposals from Weston and Sampson. They were promising to have 2 to us, and I was gonna schedule the next meeting as soon as I get those, but right now I don't have any new information, so we haven't met, but as soon as I get those proposals, I plan to reach out to you folks and get a meeting scheduled, and we'll continue business. So that's it on that one.
All right, all the comments on that? Okay, next item is the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission update.
All right, I just wanted to put this on the agenda and give you an update. So I know there's been a lot going on, there's a lot of things moving around, and I wanted to just make sure this board was aware of all those. So the commission did hire CDM Smith to investigate basically 3 different things in regards to the watershed boundary and the Grace Lawn pit. There were concerns and requests made by the drinking water program, so CDM Smith is charged with addressing that. There was recommendations made by the first CDM Smith, which it had an area of uncertainty, and they recommended doing some 3D visualization modeling of the groundwater to make it from uncertain to certain. So they are doing that work. And the third piece was looking at a parcel of property that was outside of any previous scope. It's in the same parcel of land owned by the pit owner, but it wasn't looked at as part of FB or a previous look by CDM. Nobody had looked at it. So I know the owner has looked at it and the city has looked at it, and it would appear it's internally draining. It doesn't, the surface water doesn't flow towards the lake, but we need to look at it through a microscope that the drinking water program would accept if it's going to be fully moved out of the watershed. So that is all occurring, expecting to hear any day, if not before the end of May, on the progress of that analysis. So that's ongoing. So yeah, that's the update I had on the
Any
commission.
other, and you're on the committee,
Yeah,
anything
so,
you'd like to add?
couple big things, and Mike can back me up on some of the stuff. The watershed management plan is a draft that's being updated. It's supposed to be available to all the trustees, and you guys are.
Saw that, yeah.
Okay, good. So
I
that's.
had asked Mike.
Yeah, that's on our agenda under new business number 8. I've got that
Good,
on the
we'll
agenda.
talk about that. There is another document that the trustees are privy to, but that's not public. It's LawPIC legal questions that we discussed in executive session. So I can get you guys a copy of that at the meeting here before we leave.
Yep.
I did
It's-
forward that to all trustees.
Okay, good, that's already done. And the last thing is the draft rules of the LawPIC Commission, because we've asked them to come up with some bylaws, because right now there's not even Robert rules or anything like that. They do have a draft, I've been looking at it, it looks pretty good. And if you're interested in seeing that, I can get that to you as well if we haven't sent that out.
I have not set that up.
That's it on the LawPIC side. We got a meeting next month,
June 14th.
14th. It's a Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Be great if the city was there. And our
I
new
think
assistant
Eric
superintendent.
Cousins is planning to attend,
Okay. What's the date?
the 14th.
At Babcock, right?
Hey, you got this meeting, he's going to that
All
one.
right.
You'll be there.
I'll be there.
All right, that's that one.
All on that, then we'll go on to the next. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
On the reverse side of
That's next.
We're gonna talk about that next.
Okay. The next item is the superintendent review of commission letter of recommendation.
All right, so this agenda item, John Blaze was kind enough to come to represent the city of Auburn, because I feel like after I reviewed this recommendation letter, that many of these things, if not almost all of them, they were recommended by the Watershed Protection Commission, are current actions that are being undertaken by the city of Auburn that the district has supported. All of these recommendations come from the studies that have been done in the last 2 years, from the FB environmental analysis, the peer review by CEI, and some of the work that's being done by CDM Smith. So all of these recommendations came directly from that. The commission has been meeting and discussing those. They compiled them in March. They sent us this letter. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time, and we've put this off until now. So you have 2 documents in there. I gave you a copy of the recommendation letter in the packet, and then I gave you a memo format. Basically, in red are my comments and the action that we're taking, and I'll just run down through here. and I'll read the recommendations and a brief snippet of what's currently being done. And then if John could kind of update us on this once we get through this, as far as the timelines of some of these things, because I know some of these, they're in process, and it's gonna take time, but it's you know, this is what everybody seems to be heading in the same direction, so. The commission recommended a moratorium on siting septic systems within a 400-foot buffer around Lake Auburn. The city is currently taking action on a 300-foot buffer around Lake Auburn. So that is currently in process. I'm not sure where the differing of 400 feet and 300 feet lies, what the original recommendation was, if 400 was just more protective and that's what was recommended, but that is currently in process, and certainly when that goes to either planning board or city council for the readings, you know, the recommendation could be made for 400 feet if that's.
Who made that recommendation of 400 feet?
That is being recommended by the commission to the district, but that was part of a recommendation, I believe, made by FB Environmental.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's science behind the
Correct.
400
Don't put
feet?
septic systems with, well, I don't,
Do we know why
It's
they brought it down?
the New Hampshire no wake zone.
Yeah.
Do you know why we brought, is there a reason why we brought it down to 300 feet?
I'm not sure on the commission is recommending 400 feet. I don't know, I'd have to look to what's FB might have only recommended 300.
And
The commission,
FB recommended 300.
so the commission bumped it up to 400, so.
And I thought on the original draft document it was 400 feet.
Maybe the draft and then the final was ended up at
Yeah, that
300.
big document now that includes everything in one package.
Yeah.
I thought I saw 400 feet of that one. So it probably could go to the 400, we don't know yet, but at least 300 for sure, but 400 is.
Again, these are recommendations being made by the commission, not necessarily, and they're not specifically referenced to a source. They may have twisted a little bit, you know, if the recommendation from FP was 300, they set it at 4. Moratorium on new development within the boundaries of the Ag and Resource Protection Zone within Auburn. The City Council, and I know I've read this in a couple of occasions, is taking action to change the Ag and Resource Protection Zone to a Lake Auburn Conservation and Natural Resource Protection. I do better if I just speak rather than try to read, sorry. That will prohibit all new residential development within an area. That will actually effectively protect 73% of all watershed lands in Auburn. So I mean, that's huge.
But I want to caveat that.
Sure.
That's for residential development, right? So you still have other permittable uses there. So as we discuss this, if we talk about like water quality and total protection, we're just addressing the one residential use. It doesn't affect all the other
So
uses.
it's building a house, so you can't have a septic system. So if you can't have a septic system, you can't have a house.
Right, but but there's a lot of other relatively aggressive uses. If you think about, you know, they could clear cut 100 acres and put in corn, for example. The only thing that we're eliminating in this particular one is animal units. So new animal farms can't be put in there. That'll be what we're proposing, and no residential. There's still a lot of I just want everyone at the district here to understand there's still a lot of uses allowed in the AGRP zone that could be impactful to lake water quality if you really look at it.
Yeah, I looked at it, I know that I read that, and it talked about it being a conservation district.
Yeah.
Which I read as being nothing allowed to be
Nothing's
used.
going on.
So is that changed?
That's not change, there's very specific language in here. We have not addressed that. We're just at residential and no animals.
So if
no new animal
So
farms.
you couldn't put a business up there anyway.
You could have a mining operation up there.
You could harvest and soil disturbance and
Yeah.
grow weed and put
Well,
chemical tanks.
If you were a farmer of something that was allowed in the zone,
Right.
could you then build a residence? Or is that,
Well, you
that's,
couldn't based on.
No, you couldn't, not based
Okay.
on that language.
Right now you can, if you have the
Right.
income standard. If you
Right,
have the
right.
income standard, you can build a house.
That's right.
In the watershed.
Yeah.
Then it's higher, the
I
income standard is
just
higher.
want to just add that as
Well, I think that,
as
well,
discussion.
And the commission's recommendation is any new development.
Yeah,
You know,
moratorium
they're
on new
moratorium
development.
any new development, so, again,
So-
but the action that's currently being taken.
But that
is-
would also exclude trails, because I made sure, I mean, trails and public education and stuff that, you know, it's done correctly. I mean,
Well, I would think that I like the idea when I heard about the conservation district and nothing being allowed in the watershed ag zone.
I think
So I don't know,
yeah, I'll just provide you with my opinion. I think we just look at the uses collectively, we get, I think, that time that Eric spends with LawPac, I think we just collectively get with them and then suggest some of the uses that are allowed. So I think some things like with recreation and some things that
Yep.
make sense.
They have to get approval.
Yeah, and they're still under the special exception rules, but I think we need to revisit that, but right now, we're just targeting residential homes and animal units, new animal unit farms, so, just so you know. But there's more work to be done if we're truly gonna get serious about water quality.
We've got a bunch of different recommendations here. Let me try to skip down through these. So alum treatments be scheduled as needed based on regular monitoring rather than a one-time permitted, a predetermined schedule. I think that was a misinterpretation by FB Environmental as part of their report, and the commission kind of latched onto that. Basically what they're recommending here is our current practice. We don't have a predetermined schedule of putting alum in Lake Auburn. We don't have, it's not scheduled to put in this year, it's not scheduled to put in next year, it's never scheduled to be put in again. We have a permit, we're allowed to put it in, we just renewed our permit. If the conditions dictate that we need it, we're gonna apply it. So basically, we're already adhering to that recommendation. Any future development based on changes to the watershed boundary on Graceland Road property is required to monitor surface and groundwater to ensure that water does not flow into the watershed. This, to me, kind of points at stormwater, and to me, this is already currently accomplished. Again, if that area gets removed from the watershed and it gets developed, that development would need a stormwater management plan, and that the city requires of all developments, particularly commercial developments and that type of stuff. Large projects in particular are sent to a third-party review, and as part of that, they have to make sure they don't change the current flows of any types of groundwater or surface water. So that would be, I think that achieves that. So I think that one's already currently
Mike,
done.
I've been in and out of that pit recently. The only thing I see in there is the blasting operation. Are they concluding that, or is that continuing? I see the blast blankets. I mean, the ledge is right there, the rock is right there. It's kind of centralized in the pit. But is that something they need to keep doing, or is that just a friendly?
When we
They need the
walked
rock
that,
to mix with the sand to get spec gravel.
when we walked that
Exactly.
pit back in, I believe it was December now, it was way back when, we walked it with Mike Gatto, a representative of the owner. I was surprised to see that blasting, and I was like, you guys blast in here? Oh yeah, I blast all the time. Are you gonna need to blast for the development? And he had said no. Right now, if they change the use and they develop, that activity would probably cease, to be honest with you. And when we were walking out of there, my biggest concern, and when I was talking to Eric with, is of all the things that needs to stop, that blasting needs to stop. Because one thing that's known is that bedrock knob is what prevents the groundwater from flowing back towards the lake. And if you blast that out of the earth, then guess what? You're changing the flow of the groundwater. So certainly, in my justification for why we're having CDM Smith reconfirm the direction of groundwater flow, well, there's been changes that have happened since that was last done. There's been blasting in there, there's been excavation in there. Has that changed the flow of groundwater? All of these recommendations that were made by FB and these other organizations, they're based off from analysis that were done 20, 30 years ago. A lot's changed since then.
I think that's very fair. And just to add a little bit to the stormwater comment, not only will this project, if it gets allowed and we were able to change the zoning, it does fall under Site Location and Development Act. And there's 25 criteria in there, and one of those criteria is groundwater. So we as staff and you know, Mike talks a little bit about our third-party consultant. We can recommend that they put additional groundwater monitoring wells in there. That could be a condition of the approval. It would certainly be something we would want to consider, you know, based on the scale and scope of the project and the concerns of public water supply here. So there is ways to address it, and we do have checks and balances already in place, and that would be something that would fall under kind of our purview with the guidance of, you know, a consultant, particularly in this particular case, because it will be a big project. So.
At least the blasting, I mean, there will not be any more pit operations going on there.
If it gets changed.
Yeah.
But right now, they can continue to
So,
operate in
yeah,
there.
so that was, and whenever I get a chance to talk about this, I love to. I did the modeling for existing pit versus constructed site. You know, so our phosphorus reduction, regardless of where it goes, and our nitrogen reduction is cut in half. The sediment is over 100% reduction. So even if we think about, I think about public infrastructure, not only for you guys, for the water district, but for the city. I mean, that sand's going somewhere right now, right? So that's going into our stormwater system that we have to pay for, or you guys as taxpayers have to pay for to clean every year. And so I think there's a net benefit there in terms of changing the use, the land use there. But that's my perspective on that. Obviously, as long as we can prove that the groundwater is truly going away from the lake, but there's still a net benefit for phosphorus and nitrogen. And we could say that if that was going to the lake, that's been an NPS site for the last 60 to 100 years, and that in itself bioaccumulates in the lake and creates your, you know, the lake degradation that requires you to have the alum treatments ultimately. So that's just something to think about. That's kind of from my viewpoint. I was on the Kennebec Water District board for a while. I did a lot of watershed protection for Kennebec Watershed. That's how we kind of introduced the animal units piece into this. The original one that, you know, we just were talking about, and I saw that farms were probably the biggest impact to water quality. If we're talking about purely drinking water, and we're talking about water quality, the most impactful for me that I saw was animal unit farms that impacted public, you know, water supply. So just lended some of my experience with this group. So.
On page 2, the next 3 bullets, I think are all related to each other in one way, shape, or form.
Same. We don't have 3
We're
bullets.
missing a page.
Yeah, I noticed my packet didn't have that page either. I think it got missed in the printing when they copied and put the packets together. But the digital packet, it should be in the email. There was a second page.
Oh,
Do you have any make copies, Mike?
Okay,
Yeah.
no, yeah, that's okay.
I had to grab it from Matt too. That's what.
Yeah, I didn't get it either, so whatever. I'll look at it online.
So the next 3 bullets that were in there related to a recommendation to have basically a responsible management entity. I know, Dan, I've heard you say this before, like a year ago, that can do septic system inspections throughout the watershed, not only on new systems, but on existing systems. And finding a way to share in this responsibility and who's responsible for it. And I think, you know, I'm going off my recollection, but my recommendation is that this be the Watershed Protection Commission. I really think they're the entity that should manage that and undertake that work. The reason I feel that way is because then that puts some of the, you know, responsibility not only as us, as the drinking water user of Lake Auburn, but also the city of Lewiston, being an entity or a share in the cost of the commission.
Using 64% of the resource,
So they should help fund the inspection of these systems. And I know through my discussions with Eric and other city staff members that the city feels that they may be able to contribute towards that in some way, shape, or form as well, because that is more or less a code enforcement function as part of new development. So I don't have a, thank you for coming on those. Sorry, I took a copy of those. Did you have one of those?
Good. Thank you,
So
Tanya.
again, a system of oversight for installation of any new mounted wastewater systems, created and implemented to ensure proper installation. You know, this system should include inspection prior to installation, prior to covering, and after final installation. And I'll just read down through the other two bullets. An inspection schedule be developed and implemented for current septic systems. Ensure there is a reasonable entity for the purpose of monitoring septic systems. So I feel like my comments cover all of those. We're in agreement with that, I feel like. I mean, I think that's a good thing, and I think, you know, this organization, through funding of the commission, would support that. And I feel like we would get, you know, Lewiston should also contribute to that, and if we can get any partnership from the city, that we should take advantage of that. These things need to be developed, but I understand everybody agrees to them, so it's gonna take further development of them. Require using the most stringent standards for new septic systems as set forth in the main subsurface disposal rules, chapter 241. The city of Auburn has examined this and is in the process of implementation. This has been, you know, again, slowed by the lawsuit and conflicting recommendations and opinions of mounted systems. I would recommend a staff level meeting with the district, city of Auburn, city of Lewiston Water Division representatives at the table to discuss this topic. I feel like everybody's preaching the same thing, that we all want better treatment and that we recommend this. This has been proven to be a better science. Why wouldn't we support it? So getting these three entities together and on the same page, to me, would really help us get past where we're talking through lawyers and actually making something happen. I don't know if we can do that yet until this litigation gets dismissed, but at least that's my recommendation there. We got to move forward at some point.
Yeah, Evan talks about it right here in this square right here. This is talking about that septic design. They kind of, you know, from a scientific, a third party, just someone looking at it, I think he gets pretty good notes on that.
Failing systems be replaced using updated standards required for new installations. And, you know, absolutely, and that would be something that this entity would ensure.
Mike,
And again,
before we jump to another one, I got a question on that.
sure.
How is it determined when a system's failing? How's it determined if a system is failing? Everything's underground.
Well, if you're doing, you know, one of the other comments was inspection schedule developed and implemented for current systems. So if you start inspecting current systems and you found one is in failure, you know, there's many ways that a septic system could be in failure. You know, if the leach fields failed, if their tanks failed, if their pump systems failed in the home, there's many different levels of that, and I would think a good inspection would catch any of those. There's other methods, you know, we've found septic systems issues in the past through watershed monitoring. We've found issues and traced them back, and you know, found the issue. This study that was just recently done, that is very interesting, and some of the data in there suggests some hot spots that we really need to take a look at. So again, that's another method for that type of, you know,
I guess
finding.
just to add a little to that, there's typically two ways that come up with a failing septic system. If there's an outbreak, so there's physically, you can see effluent coming out of the ground. I've seen it before.
Particularly with a mounted system.
Yeah, and then secondly, another one is that when you inspect the tank, so there's either a baffle there, which is made out of concrete, some of the older ones, or a sanitary tee. And oftentimes the sanitary tee is failing or the baffle is broken. Because you've got the scum layer on the top, you've got solids on the bottom, and you really only want to capture the effluent that's in the middle between the two, and you know, to get that siphon effect to that field. So you don't want any of those solids or the scum layer going into that field, and that's where you get typically failing, and you get too much BOD and the system fails. So just to kind of explain your question.
And will there be an order?
What's that?
An order?
There could be an order. There could be an order, but not necessarily. Sometimes, depending on the anaerobic activity in the tank, sometimes it's hard to tell. But certainly you could see it by just popping the tank and looking at the sanitary tee, particularly on the downhill side. You really need to pay attention to that. And that's like inspection 101 for a septic inspector, kind of, they provide that service.
John, I'll add two things. There's also a distribution box in some of the modern systems that are in the draining field. You can get access to that. And the fluid filter is accessible if you have a riser. So most of the new systems, they put a riser in for the effluent filter and a riser for the pump out if they need to. That'd be the best deal. Or now combo tanks, you can actually get a big riser, capture both of those. It's really easy to inspect. So the responsible management entity will look at systems anything over 20 or 30 years old and then make recommendations, and the homeowner is going to have to spend some money. And that's what's key, so we can continue the inspection easily. Because, I mean, you should be able to get to a site with risers and you know where the D-box is and be done in an hour, you know, boom. Check the tank, check the effluent filter, check the D-box, walk around for breakout, especially after heavy rains or in the spring. That's when these things are going to get saturated, that's when they're going to start to have the breakout. You know, and that's the thing. The breakout is now you're getting your bacteria, viruses, your nitrates, everything is just going into the water stream and that's getting to the lake. Yeah. Other than that, I think that harvesting isn't in here, right, and logging? So can we add, when we go back to them, can we add something about, again, I know they're making recommendations for the updated best management practices for forestry, but we cannot continue in the upper watershed as well, via the POLA, to allow people to log without using, they're right now using the forestry best management standards. Forestry, this is state of Maine, this is a forestry state. We promote trails and recreation and hunting, and forestry is very lax. The type of watershed forestry that's been taking place, especially near Lake Auburn or along the Spring Road, and you guys have heard me bitch about that. That is something we need to make sure the law pick, because Lewiston, to be frank, and I'll say it right on tape, Heather Hunter, she's been in charge of the books, and they want revenue from logging to help pay the Lewiston share of what they need to pay for to protect this lake. So we need to make sure as a district that, hey, there's, you know, they have to use, I mean, if they have to use erosion control mulch and silt fencing and just stay the hell away from the lake and no steep slopes, these are things that loggers don't give a shit about right now.
Well, that's certainly, I know that's a little off the topic of this one. I do
Oh,
want to
yeah.
stay on this. I know we got a lot of year to cover. That is in the watershed management plan recommendation back to the commission.
Okay.
So that's in there. So the watershed management plan that is in draft mode that they're going to be reviewing at their next meeting covers that and just what you're saying. So I was very happy to see that in there. We'll touch on that. We got to get through these.
Thank you, John.
Don't get me talking.
Where was I? Create requirements for the replacement of old septic systems. Again, I think that falls right in line with those other bullets. All that stuff needs to be organized and put onto that RME. Low impact development standards to be implemented. The city has already adopted new low impact development standards. John, when did you guys do that?
Over a year ago.
Over a year ago now. So that, you know, we're already meeting that objective. Identify areas to be conserved in the upper watershed. The commission has a draft land acquisition policy that has not formally been adopted. Anytime they look at purchasing property, if a property comes to their attention and you know, they're going to consider it, they go back to that plan now, and they, again, as part of, they don't have bylaws. They always say, well, we haven't adopted this, but this is what we follow, and that prioritizes land purchases. So my recommendation back to them would be, why don't you just adopt your policy and, you know, objective, you know, done, you know. We're already doing this. Prohibit large-scale disbursement of organic and synthetic fertilizers. I put down we should probably discuss this with the city. I'm not sure what current ordinances are in place to prohibit this. Or how we achieve this, but I'm certainly not, you know, I think it would be a good recommendation. I mean, nobody, you know, that should not be in the resource protection zone. You know, that really should be.
There's already protections in place for some of that through the state pesticide and licensing and fertilizer.
Okay.
But doesn't mean you can't take a look at that and make it more stringent, make recommendations to make it more stringent.
kind of in my summary of these, all of these recommendations are consistent with the current discussions regarding the lake and the watershed. The district needs to continue to work with the City of Auburn to follow through on these recommendations and to ensure that new practices are followed once adopted. I guess one recommendation that I could make would be for the district to formally, once all of these are then created. I know we kind of ran into this over the last year when we're talking about which ordinance carries. If the district were to formally adopt these, then and we created those, if in the future the city's ordinances get lessened, ours would carry because it would be more restrictive. So in the end, if we land on these, we get new septic standards, we get new boundaries. You know, if the district were to vote on those and create those as ordinance, then ours would carry. So again, I would make that recommendation. I would like the district to consult with our legal team to better understand its authority in the upper watersheds towns. I feel like all of these things we've been talking about doing septic standards, we all intend to, if they're going to be implemented in Auburn, that they should be implemented in all the upper watershed towns, everywhere that affects the lake. And I really feel like we need to, consult with our legal team to understand our authority and how, if we create an ordinance, how does that become upheld in that neighboring town? Who's responsible for managing that and ensuring it? Does that municipalities then have to adhere to it, or how do we enforce that? I don't quite fully understand that myself, and I feel like it's our obligation to understand that before we start venturing down the road of doing that. And I would also encourage that formal communications start in advance of these changes to those towns. I know they were copied on this recommendation letter from the commission, so certainly they know, if they've been watching what's going on around Lake Auburn for the last year and a half, they know some of these things are coming. But I just feel like we should be proactive and be the good neighbor and just let them know that what we're up to.
Maybe we should have to provide a stamp on new buildings within that.
Yeah,
Auburn has to see it.
Well, there has to be an enforcement component too.
Well, I just don't know if we adopt an ordinance that says, let's say, a septic standard, would their code enforcement departments uphold that septic standard, or are they gonna uphold what they had adopted? Would we have to then overstep and send our crews up there to stamp or inspect or make sure that they're following up? I don't know how that works.
Mike, these are all things that in the bylaws for protection of Lake Auburn, that the committee with council has reviewed at length, and we just basically got to a stopping point where all of these items indirectly, at least, but very many of them were directly addressed in the draft revisions that we had and we had legal counsel review. But because of the lawsuit, we stopped
On
that.
hold, yeah.
We put that on hold. So I think cross-referencing this document with all of what is in there that we spent a lot of money on legal counsel review is, to me, would be our first step. And I think, absolutely, I would support all of the, the direction, and, maybe there's some things to refine here that we said we still have to kind of like work through with the city, and some external pieces that steps ahead we have to get through. But I would support like even a motion tonight to approve the direction of this document, and then the recreation, the reactivation, whether it's this board or a new committee to start that again with the approval of our current attorney relating to the lawsuit. And I think part of our decision was we weren't advised by the attorney, but it was just like, hey, this lawsuit, we need to stop talking about this. These are all things we're talking about still, and we all agree with, and we firmly support. So I think we have a decision to make, and my first motion would be to, at least on a initial level, to make a motion right now to support the direction of this document and the continued work towards getting back to the formal process, which in my mind is the POLA, the protection of Lake Auburn, the bylaws for protection of Lake Auburn in a formal document that's updated when we have the legal, when we have the advice from our council that step is okay to proceed with. I don't know if that's a motion I'd like to make.
So repeat the motion, because I'm willing to second that as
I was jotting, let me see, support direction and content of this letter of recommendation, and and this is where you were talking faster than I could write.
Reconvene the
You
poll.
want to reconvene
Well,
the bylaw review?
I think the reason I started with directionally, I think that's as far as I want to go right now, is because I think we do have to cross-reference what's been done, all the work that's been done, from notes from legal counsel relating to that document, and then the work that's been added here and the work the city's been doing too. I don't know if I don't know what the steps are, so directionally to support the content of this document as a working document, and with the goal of getting back to finalizing our bylaws for protection of Lake Auburn, which is our responsibility.
So would you say support direction and content of this letter, and to cross-check the work of the Protection of Lake Auburn Committee and consult with legal about continuing
Yeah.
progress?
Exactly.
All right.
And there's a second right here.
And one thing that I would like to discuss real quick on that is, and I agree, although the only thing I'm a little bit nervous about the COLA is how long it's gonna take for that to go through. Because I know that, we didn't even get to we've already seen a lot of concerns about that, and how long it's gonna take before everybody signs off on that. But as long as that happens quickly, I'm in favor of it, but I'd also like to have a caveat that there's two items that we are looking for refinement. One of them is the buffer, and number two is the allowable uses for the ag zone in the watershed.
I think you had said it's a working document.
Right now it is. It is.
Exactly.
It's contentious in a way because it's, it's.
I don't think this is contentious.
COLA?
No, this.
No, this isn't, but the
I
COLA.
think where it leads,
Right.
the end point, when we are able to, with
Yeah.
legal permission, I think is,
Yeah.
that's the document that we use as the parallel to the city ordinances that relate to these items. And so a lot of work has been done. We've just stopped our work. We're a volunteer board, like the group of all of us that had participated on that
Right.
committee too, just put in a lot of extra time.
No, I have no problem including
On the
that,
side.
because I think we still have to move forward with how we're gonna do this. But, because it may be that document that's gonna generate the process.
Yeah, I know.
But we got a little problem that somebody's gotta go talk to the town, and the attorney is part of the Watershed Protection Commission, so they're probably gonna be obligated to the poll.
And they were
But not
notified too.
the
There was, I don't remember who
POLA
was
doesn't
contacted.
set the legislation. POLA just recommends we pursue legislation.
But they were notified and involved in, I don't remember who exactly, if it was, I'll have to go back through the notes, but also the specifics of how to enforce were reviewed with our attorney in those discussions.
Good. So that works, except that I would wanna put that caveat that the buffers is something that may be more but not less.
So the recommendation of the commission was a 400-foot buffer.
And looks like we're thinking there's a 300-foot buffer on the table right now, but it could be a 400 too. I thought I saw.
But I think there are a lot of other things like tweaks like that no matter what, we have to come back to this.
We
It's a
have to
working
rely on
document.
staff just to
I think
update
I'm
that
looking,
stuff.
personally, I feel like a general direction vote of support of the direction of this as something to get back to our formal process where we've abandoned.
Well, sure, I agree with everything that's on there, I just think. Yeah.
Mike, can you work with this comfortably?
Well, we got a motion and a second on the table to kind of do a couple of different things. I mean, I know certainly we would like to have an objective too of showing that we're working on this. I don't know if, the Polar Committee, that's complicated because it's on hold because of litigation, and we don't know when the end of that could be. So that may complicate this decision. Maybe, if you do, it sounds like everybody supports the direction and content of this letter, and it's
I think
something.
that's the essence of the motion.
that-
Maybe I can just to clarify
just
without even any formal changes, but it's just.
Simplify it just to that, and that we're gonna, as a board, we're committed to working towards these objectives,
And like I said, we need the legal consultation for the next steps of the formal process. So I don't think I'm asking for any action on that committee or the bylaws right now. That was where I kind of based my decision to really lay support towards some formal action that we haven't been taking. And to me, I think this is just supporting this document directionally, knowing that there's work to go. We're gonna come back and probably have multiple discussions about all these items, along with the city as well, so.
So that's gonna be your motion, just to
Yes.
support the letter and the direction of it, and to continue to work on it.
Do you want to repeal that motion?
You'd have to take back your motion originally if you don't want.
Or I could just second as modified.
Second the friendly amendment. maybe make that as a
I
friendly
think a lot, I can if you want, but I personally feel like there's a lot of clarification as to the why I'm making that motion to support this document directionally, but if, whatever people prefer.
There's also in their review, reconvene the bulletin.
Which is after we get legal counsel, which we're not to the point yet. I think there are items that need to be worked out and questions that have to be asked, so yes, if you'd like an amendment to, or I don't know if I can make my own amendment, but scratch the COLA piece. I think, I don't know, help me out here.
I think you probably just, I guess we could just vote that one down, and then you could make another motion to just do a motion to support the direction and content of this letter of recommendation.
I can take it back.
Okay, we'll take it back and then just.
Repeal your
So
original motion.
I'll withdraw that
And then offer a new motion.
And the motion is to support directionally what you had there,
The support the direction and content of this letter of recommendation and commit towards working towards the objectives.
perfect.
Second.
There we go. All those in favor?
Discussion? Any more discussion
Any
on
more
the new
discussion?
motion?
Well, should we note that it's not going to be, I mean, this isn't going to be less stringent, you're looking at making it more stringent.
Absolutely. These are all good stuff. It's all,
Yeah.
We are voting to be more of a burden to the Auburn taxpayers and less of a burden hopefully to the Auburn and Lewiston ratepayers. We're clearly doing that
That's the
right now.
specific
Yeah.
vote.
The city of Auburn is willing to do that because their staff and city council wants us to happen too.
And that's why I was asked John if you have any input here, or anything at all, or?
Sure, I mean, I don't want to get in the way of your vote. I do have a little bit of an update, but I don't want to get in the way of this vote. So I won't say anything at this point. I think what you guys are doing is good. But I guess you asked, so I'm going to give it to you guys.
well, does it relate to this particular motion?
I don't think so.
You should probably vote.
Yeah.
If I have any more discussion on that? All those in favor then? Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we can go on.
All right. So, I've got a copy for everybody here. This is one total copy though. They're like 3 pages.
Yep.
I'm sure everybody gets it. And this is just kind of a recap of what we've all been working on. We kind of summarized it. Eric and I put some, and we, did everybody get a copy?
No.
Did you get one?
Not yet. Thank you, John.
But this already went to council. This is just kind of a roll-up of, this is just a roll-up of what we've been working on. I've got it.
Oh, so this is the memo that,
Yeah.
we've seen this memo.
Okay, everyone's seen the memo?
Yep.
Okay, and just to kind of give you guys kind of a brief, kind of what the city's process is and how we're gonna approach this is that we're not gonna get to this topic because we've got a full load in June, even though the workshop, council workshop information came out, it said June. We're not gonna get this as a workshop until July, just so you all know. As we work through workshop and then public hearing and then go to council, and get this, all this stuff approved, think of it as a 3 to 4 month time period with definitely two opportunities for the public to speak on the matter. But I think, our planning board chair is pretty generous. They allow people to speak in workshops as well. So that in itself, we're gonna prepare a lot of these documents for July. So we're gonna update everybody. And when I say update, there may be some things that the planning board has already voted on, and they've already taken action on, but we're gonna review, in the workshop, we're gonna review everything that we've done to date, and then we're gonna review everything that we're proposing as new. So we're gonna kind of bring everybody up to speed. I kind of wanted everyone to know that was our legal counsel kind of provided us that advice, because we started on this subject in 2022, we covered a bunch of stuff, and then we kind of dropped it, and we went on to other things, and then a year later, now we're picking it back up. So that's That's our process, and we're expecting to start in July, and hopefully we get all through this October, November time period.
Very good. All right. Seems how we are getting a little bit tight on time. Does anybody have anything else on this subject? And we can obviously bring this up again as another agenda item, because I really think it's something we should talk about every meeting. Okay. I guess we'll go on to the next item, water quality.
Look at that 4.5-inch storm due to us.
It's not good, Dan. Not good at all. So after ice out, water quality this year looked pretty typical. Back end of April, last day of April, first day of May, large rainstorm, varies on, rainfall totals vary anywhere from 3 inches to 5 inches on what we received that day. But what we did get was some flooding beyond anything we had ever really seen. In your packets, there's a couple of graphs. The first one shows lake elevation. You'll see the black line on the left third of the page being you see that sharp rise. That's the lake elevation. We actually opened the outlet dam, over 300 turns, pretty near. We didn't dare go many more turns open. And we were still climbing. We were up over the overflow splash boards on the dam by 3 feet, and it was just licking the bottom of the dam supports, and the lake was still rising. So it was a large, intense storm that brought a lot of inflow into the lake and a lot of nutrients into the lake. The water coming in from Townsend Brook looked very dark brown, black for like 2 days. Turbidity has suffered the clarity of the lake. If you look at the second graph, shows that we are up over 1 right now. We're hovering right around 1 today. And we were already up due to a large storm back in December that also brought in a large inflow of nutrients and flow into the lake. There's a few things going on. One thing that we've noticed back last summer, there was a culvert that was replaced on the Tot Lot Road. A new box culvert was installed, and since that culvert installation, we've seen elevated phosphorus numbers into the lake at the Townsend Brook Inlet. And twice since the installation of that new culvert, we have overtopped Lakeshore Drive with large rain events, which we go back through our records and we don't have any records of that happening in the past. And what's happened is the bottleneck has now been moved closer to the lake. You used to hold back water at the old crossing, and so you used to dam that up and it would be held up into the wetlands above that brook. But now with the larger culvert there, you're pushing that down onto Lakeshore Drive, and the weak point is the culvert onto Lakeshore Drive. We're actively working with DOT because that is a state aid road, and we're applying for a MPI project, which would be half funded by us and half funded by the state, and I say us being the commission. And we're also looking at getting grant funds from DEP for that local match. So if we have to fund half of it and we could get a DEP grant. The problem is right now DOT doesn't have that culvert on their plan for another 5 years. It needs to be done now. That road's overflowed twice, it's caused erosion, it's problematic. If we can get an MPI project, this could be replaced potentially maybe this year, if not next year, and get that taken care of. So that's something we're pursuing. But it's back to water quality. It's not good. I am very concerned. Certainly all of these things we're talking about are all good things and will help water quality, but our vulnerability is at the point where I'm questioning the sustainability of things, and I would like to. I'm going to work on a letter that I would like to draft and to be sent to different entities that we really need to start looking at making plans for if it's groundwater, if it's filtration. We need to start getting geared up and closer, because right now we're extremely vulnerable. One big storm away from catastrophe is not a good place for somebody who we supply water from Lake Auburn.
NTUs?
Yeah, we haven't come close to threatening the
We
waiver.
haven't come close to 2 yet, right?
No, we didn't even get up over a 1.2 or
Okay.
1.5. This is, my concern is gonna be when the water temperature warms. We washed a lot of nutrients into the lake with that big storm, and they're just sitting there right now. When the water temperature warms up, that's when the problem's gonna occur. And what are we gonna do? Is an alum treatment gonna be able to be done in time? We're gonna have to deal with that as we go through the season. But bigger picture wise, I really think the district needs to start preparing itself for a more sustainable supply. And whether that be through treatment or groundwater, we've got to be prepared for this, because I'm just telling you, as somebody who's worked for over 20 years in this business, when your water supply is threatened like this, you're very vulnerable. I can't go turn on another valve and get water from over here until we clear this up. This is what we got. And, I'm gonna be working on that, and I will address that to the board. And
Do we have a buoy here where we want to put the intake, measuring water quality?
Yep,
At the
we haven't,
depth that we want to set the new intake?
that hasn't been determined,
Because
no.
if we could get and start monitoring, if it doesn't get changed this summer,
But we don't even know if running, if you have an algae bloom and you have cyanotoxin in the lake, it doesn't matter what depth you get your water from. If that bloom
that's in the
occurred,
column.
it's in the water. And that's one thing we've looked at, is potentially moving our intake to the deeper portion of the lake, and I still think that would be worth looking at, but I'm talking a bigger picture wise. I'm not saying we need to build a plant next year, but we need to start getting prepared. And we need to look at this, seriously.
It's
So again,
interesting you note about that culvert, how that, we thought they were improving something, and all they did is make it worse.
right,
And these are the kind of things that are really out of our control,
right.
and that's why we've always said, it's not a matter of if, but when. And some people say, well, it's 10 years out. And some of us said, no, it could be more like 3 years out. I mean, we know that eventually it's gonna happen. So I really think that anything you can do to look towards that, look for opportunities,
When
you
you
should
look
be
at
ready.
when you look at graphs like this that basically break down from 2018 to 2023, and you start seeing the frequency of the spikes increasing, our vulnerability is going up. It's a combination of many different things.
If that
It's
was
not-
a jet engine, we'd be putting a new engine on.
Right,
That's right.
and this is our intake and this is our water, and we need to address it.
Right.
And again, I will work on that. It's something I promised to have before the next meeting, and you'll
But I would
probably.
also ask that maybe you can readdress, because we had asked the city of Lewiston, would they be willing to participate in its study to prepare for this? And they said, no, we're not interested this time. They put their head in the sand.
They need to hear it.
Well, this letter will be addressed to the Water District Board. I will copy the City of Lewiston
Because
councilors.
they should share
I will
the
address
the
it
study,
to
the
the
money that's
commissioners.
been
Again, it's just my,
Yep.
I'm your superintendent, I'm your designated primary operator of our system. I oversee everything that goes on here, and I'm concerned. And I think we need to be prepared. So I'll,
Mike, is it kind of overlap or in addition to the alternate water source discussion?
it could, that could be a solution to this problem. It's.
Because every time that spikes, we have the extended periods where we're not seeing the spikes, and I'm just curious, for first, emergency planning, if something like that happens, that's what our first objective of the committee was sort of like, hey, if we do have a disaster, like some kind of a disaster, whatever, the source, like, do we have a plan to?
Yeah,
Well, the
And we'll work on
volume
that
we were
too.
looking at was for,
we're just Auburn.
John, do you know we have about 4.5 million gallons that we wouldn't have to have filtration, but we would still have to treat available to Auburn?
2 mg.
2?
2 mg.
I thought it was up to 4.4.
Yep.
2, yeah.
So
We
it's not
don't-
even enough quite for Auburn. But anyways, I know we have a lot on the agenda, but I know that's a big statement to throw on
Well,
the
if you
table.
could, for the
But
next,
I'm gonna work on this, so,
if you could give us an update on that for the next
I
meeting.
will, yep.
And what I think this board should be after, we're doing it with the alternative water sources.
Yep,
But we also should be looking at, okay, even if it's 5 years out, we should, we
We need a
better start
plan,
now.
right.
Because they'll do that surge tank they started 5 years ago, getting ready for that. So We can't just say, oh, we'll just wait till it happens and it'll be okay. No,
And that plan, because we had that discussion, and it was, Lewiston didn't want to have the discussion.
That's what I mean,
So that's pretty notable, that we were actively pursuing a discussion about that plan, and it never,
no, they weren't,
It
they
never
not,
came
but
to
maybe
the
now
light.
they'll take an interest.
Are you planning on sending that to the drinking water program?
I'm gonna draft it, and then I'll get it to the board, and it can go wherever the board desires it to go, but I would think they would also pay attention to that, and, you know, anything
Yeah.
that then gets produced is public, and it would certainly, it could go many sources. They approved this district for $2.5 million 2 years ago for a preliminary design. It scored very high. You know, we got SRF funding for that we wound up declining because what they're mentioning now, that we didn't get a partner, nobody else wanted, you know, our partner didn't want to do that with us at that time. So again, you know, I'll work on this, and that'll go up, so.
Very good, okay, let's go on to new business, unless anybody else has any more on that, but if you could update us on the next one.
I will,
Okay.
yep.
New business, the 2022 draft audit.
All right, I did email this around as soon as I got a copy of this draft audit, and I also put together a memo of the highlights from the draft audit. As I think Tanya indicated in the financial update, we do need to get a vote to accept this draft audit. I only got, Dan reached out to me and just asked if I felt comfortable with everything, which I did. There was some recommendations, and I'm pawing around looking for my memo.
I did not see anything there that was dramatic that we need to worry about for recommendations, so.
Yeah, I felt pretty comfortable with implementing the things that were, why can't I find my own stuff? Yeah, thank you. Created all these little tabs to help myself out.
Always, whenever they do an audit, they
There it
always
is.
have recommendations, no matter what.
Yeah, sorry.
We gotta run them.
And that's how they justify their.
Right, so I don't see any problems implementing these things. As I mentioned, we have a new finance director starting on Monday, and once they get up to speed, I would look to, you know, take on these new recommendations and implement them. So outside of that, if you guys are good with those, then.
I think that, make a motion that we accept the draft audit with the idea that we'll be getting a report on its progress for the recommendations at future meetings.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Alrighty then.
All right, so the next draft Lake Auburn Watershed Base Protection Plan, I did forward that to all of the trustees. I've got a copy of it here in paper form. It's a pretty lengthy document. There's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of recommendations. There's one of those recommendations, as Dan had pointed to, the CDM Smith actually recommended a continued moratorium on logging and logging practices. They recommended an implementation schedule of some higher level BMPs and how to accomplish that. Andy, you had asked me what's the price tag for the recommendations to Lake Auburn. I calculated up, it's around $2 million for all the recommendations in here.
For everything in there?
Everything in here. This is in draft form. If anyone has anything specific that they have a concern about, the commission is meeting June 14th, and they're going to be going over this. I don't suspect this will be their first discussion of it. I would imagine they'll have this on their agenda at least twice before they go ahead and adopt it and move forward with it. So again, it is in draft form if anyone has any
And Mike
questions.
did tell me that regardless of filtration or not, we still have to go through with these recommendations. So, I mean, what I was looking for was that we might save money if we didn't have to do something because we had. But if it's all gonna be done no matter what, then I would, let's know about it, make sure that the commission's involved, so it's a split between the cities.
Yep.
And hopefully we get to a 60-40 split.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe a note that would immediately fund 36% of it, immediately. Because
Well,
we've
that would be the
got,
commission that would be, if the commission's got it, we gotta find a way to get that 50-50 deal to go away to something a little more palatable.
Get through one lawsuit, we'll work on
There we go.
that. Right?
Okay.
Uh,
Any more discussion on that?
Yeah, just to comment, thanks for letting me just comment, I appreciate it, I don't get to come here very often, but 319 money, watershed-based plan is the baseline, I don't know if you guys know that, but it is the baseline to apply for 319 Clean Water Act money. So once you get that, if you have a current one, which is within 10 years, then you have the ability to apply for 319 Clean Water Act money. So that That's a good thing, right? I think that's a great thing.
The last time the commission updated this plan, which was 10 years ago, immediately after that, in 2 successions, they got 319 grants.
Yep.
And around $500,000 total between the
They'll
two.
help take care of that.
Absolutely, to
You can
directly
do
fund the work.
60-40 match typically, that's how the math goes. So it's not free money necessarily, but it's
It's a
free to the
discount.
district.
It's a discount.
Yeah.
Mary Jane did a lot of that,
Mhm.
319 stuff.
All right, we'll move on to trustee open session. If anybody has anything?
What was the last thing?
If, trustee open session, we're gonna go into executive session if there's nothing for the trustee open session. All right, then, at this point, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session in accordance with 1 MSRA, section 4056,
Is it your
and discuss a personnel matter.
So moved.
Second?
Yes.
All those in favor? Okay, well, I declare us in executive session.
All right, shut the camera off.
Adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Very good.
We're done. Thank you, guys.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
It's good, I think it was a good move. Nice to meet you, by
Wow.
the way. Good
Sorry.
luck.